Okay guys, so before I start this video, I just want to say if I'm being more quiet than usual, that is because I will, in fact, it's actually basically 6 a.m. It's 5:53 currently, and by the time that I'm done reading the script, it'll probably be about like 6:20. Maybe unlikely over, but yeah, so that's why I'm going to be a little more quiet than usual. If this is your first impression of seeing me, trust me, I am not a person who is not enthusiastic. I'm not too loud, but I'm usually enthusiastic. I'm usually not ever this quiet, so let's start with the video. I want to say if you guys are listening, same the good video that was titled The Animation of Sonic Games. The guy discussed the animation of obviously every Sonic game. Well, only the home console ones. And since I haven't done a Rayman video yet, I've been planning on doing one for a long time. So here's the video I'm going to be doing for Rayman. I'm going to be doing more, just a heads up. This video is going to be taking a lot of inspiration for that video that I just talked about. So I suggest that you watch that video after because it was insanely entertaining. But let's get started by discussing the first animation of Rayman 1 made in 1995. Before I move on, I just want to add that I grew up with the Rayman version on the Game Boy Advance variant of Rayman 1, not the PS1 version that I choose to play now. I luckily still add PS1 gameplay, but keep that in mind. Now that I think about it, I'm probably going to add advanced gameplay, but never mind. So to start out, we'll talk about the cutscene animation. On the GBA version I'm playing, the magician is moving at a slow FPS with the same animation, but we don't really care about that. We really see Rayman's animations. Well, I suppose at least. I'll probably still talk about the enemies' animations as well, so now to Rayman. The animation of Rayman has, well, walking is surprisingly smooth, to be honest. Well, on the GBA at least. If you pay attention to how Rayman's hair and scarf should be moving on, like, say, a new Super Mario Bros. Game. Or any Mario game for that matter. His hair has a nice flap to it and it's slightly getting blown by the wind. The same thing pretty much goes for the scarf as well. And before you get into some other powers you have that the animation does, like Rayman, he's sticking out his tongue, kind of like he's making fun of somebody. And he pretty much just does that when he goes to enemies, if you decide to, and it kind of just scares them off or makes them dizzy, but I'm pretty sure that it only scares them off. But the other animation, of course, is he kind of just moves his body slightly, like basically every other game, besides the Mario one. The crouching animation has Rayman with Alice his right foot facing the left one and laying down sideways. At least that's what it looks like. I couldn't tell you if that was the truth or not. Otherwise, it's really just his body pulling up and down, as you'd expect, obviously. But when Rayman moves while crouching, he's moving his hands as if they were helping him move. And I say that because your hands wouldn't really help him move. The legs are your... Wait, I forgot Rayman actually doesn't have legs. So in that note, only his feet could really help him move. He's kind of just dragging his foot that's behind him, doing him along his body, which is feet abuse, dude. Take him to jail again, bro. And yeah, he went to jail. Well, not really. He was kept hostage. But anyways, that's really all I'm going to say for the crouching animation. More so crawling. His jumping animation has him starting out with his eyes closed. And I just want to say I read that part back there on the script pretty roughly, so I'm sorry if you didn't understand me whatsoever, because I wouldn't be surprised if you didn't. His hair is kind of just slightly getting blown backwards, but after he's airborne for long enough, his hair will start falling back into the air a little bit more. And from that point on, he's really just looking down at the floor. Rayman has two animations when he's on a ledge. When he's looking in the direction of the ledge when he's about to fall, he'll get this animation where his hair is kind of messed up. Listen, I have curly hair and my hair doesn't even get that messed up like that when I first wake up. But anyways, he'll move his arms up and back until he moves from the ledge. His feet will go up and down, and then the same thing happens. If he's looking the opposite way from the ledge, he'll twist his head up. P.S. Don't touch the head. It hurts. And basically repeat the process as if he was on the other side of the ledge, but his hair looks even more insane, somehow. And his hands are moving in a circle instead of just around his body. And his feet will fall back. His outer animation is one of my favorites, but he'll look around the place. And he'll shrug his shoulders like he doesn't know it's there. When he's idle on a vine, he looks down with his mouth open. When he's climbing up the vine, his feet both in the same spot, kind of jumping up, I guess you could say. It's what the kindergartners would do while trying to climb up one of them poles. I still do it to this day, but never mind that. He basically does the same thing with his hands, but kind of flaps them around on a line. And his victory animation when finishing a level is him turning around and moving his legs and hands. Wait, I meant feet. He doesn't have legs. Right, yeah, so he does move his hands and feet around his body to a position where it looks like he's celebrating for finishing the stage or segment. When he gives the magician the elect tune that he, at some point, doesn't even have, he'll look back at the camera before he gives them to the magician. Then he does the victory animation again. When Rayman charges up his punch, he has an angry face and picks one foot up from the ground. I honestly like it. And his hair flaps around when he swings his fist around in circles. I sadly just struggle to read that. And when punching, his eyes make him use the mad expression again, and then moves back his fist behind him. I read that poorly as well. There's multiple more animations Rayman has, like the flying one and running one, but I've been talking about Rayman himself for a while now, so now let's shortly just talk about the enemies and the environment of the game itself. But honestly, there's not really much to say. The environment is really goofy and has some great animations to go along with it, and it's very smooth actually. And something else for the enemies, just not the goofy part. They're not goofy whatsoever. Some of them are, most of them aren't, I guess you could say. So remember when I said earlier that I was going back to enemies? Yes, clearly now. The enemies shoot lots of goofy projectiles and whatnot. The original Rayman had great animations for a starter game, and trust me, this cycle will just get better and better and better. Unlike Sonic. I just want to say this animation is honestly one of my favorites. I don't know why, but it's just so clean. Like, the way Rayman looks is just so nice to me. But the animation when you get your standing there too long is, on the other hand, not that good. The way Rayman's eyes look is just weird. And yeah, I know, all they really could do was just put a single pixel there because it's on a Game Boy Color, but still. He does have another animation where he waves at the screen. I actually do like that, even though it's extremely simple, and when you think about it, even more simple from the other animation. The walking animation is obviously simple, but how smooth it is and the way Rayman swings his hands around and feet just looks great to me. But the crouching animation looks pretty goofy. Not to the point where it looks terrible at all, it just looks funny compared to the original animation. Every animation is basically the same from the original besides when you're charging up your punch. Rayman doesn't look bad at all. The game has very, very, very few animations, so let's move on to Rayman 2. Rayman 2 is one of the best 3D platformers of all time, but its animations are pretty good as well. The animation is too generic though, honestly, and yeah, the Game Boy Color version is generic as well, but I still just generally think it looks better on the Game Boy Color. But that's not really much of a problem. But I do like how Rayman does the flip after jumping up into the air. And I absolutely love the waiting animation. Rayman dribbles his torso, I guess. I don't know. But it's the shape of an oval, I guess. It works. And look at him go, man. He's gonna be the next Kobe, bro. It looks fire. The way Rayman throws his spears also look pretty good as well. Or energy balls, whatever you want to call them. The running animation is also pretty good though. I think it's just alright, honestly. It's not the best, of course, but whatever. I like how Rayman looks when he's swinging on a purple lump. When Rayman sidesteps, Rayman will keep moving over and kicks both the shoes. He's also moving sideways with his hands as well, obviously. Same thing goes for when he's in any direction. In the DS and 3DS version, I think you can use the Navy, whatever it's called, and the animation that Rayman uses on him is kind of like his reading somebody's mind. It looks pretty cool to me personally, but the reading animation is definitely my favorite of probably every single animation of every single Rayman game. Nothing can top him dribbling his torso. I don't know why, it just looks so good. And just the swimming animation looks amazing. When he's on top of the water, his hair still looks pretty good. It still looks the same, but his body, hands, and shoes are kind of just laying down, which is expected. When he's in water, his hair is pulled back and his body pretty much looks the same. You know, I just love how Rayman's kind of just flipping out when he's riding the bullet-looking thing. I don't know what to call it. Kind of thinks it's a horse for some reason. I love how Rayman throws his hands and feet up when he's climbing. When Rayman's flying or hovering, I guess you would say, Rayman is kind of like, this is going to be a pretty rare example, but he's kind of in like a squat position. But on the air with his hair spinning around. His rolling and sliding animations are, yeah, pretty basic, but you've got to still love them and how they feel when you're playing. Rolling feels perfect when you're playing. There's no problem with it. And sliding doesn't feel quite as good when playing since it's really just generic and the controls are pretty slippery at times. But when playing, the animation still looks pretty nice even though it's extremely generic. And I think you're kind of just idle unless you move your direction. I'm not sure though. And then there's the really goofy chicken dance that Rayman and the teaser do when it's the end of the stage. It's pretty hilarious and it honestly is really smooth for something that doesn't really even need much work. Like, say, the running animation. But that's all I've got to say for the console Rayman 2. Before I move on, all I'm going to say is just quickly mention Rayman Arena, or the PS1 version, Rayman Rush, or Rayman M, as some others like to call it. All of the animations are the same as Rayman 2, as I know of, and some look like a few from Rayman 3. So let's move on to the Game Boy Color version of Rayman 2. The animation from Rayman Forever, there is a new animation. It looks pretty bad, honestly. It's the climbing animation. It's basically just a 2D-ified version of the original from Rayman 2. It just looks insane. I haven't finished the game, but the animations that I saw when I was in the swamp, the ladders or ropes, whatever the heck we want to call them, they're not as big as Rayman's arms or how much he arches them. So it looks just so bad, honestly. But when Rayman's animation on the ropes or whatever climbing on, it actually looks pretty good. But Rayman's taking a pretty big risk, considering I'm in a swamp as I'm running the script. And you'll die if you fall, so Rayman, I think you should take a chill pill. You're not as cool as you think you are, man. The punching animation on the rope looks pretty nice too, though. For some reason, Rayman doesn't have a swimming animation. I got to Whale Bay and he actually just doesn't even swim in the world. You just walk normally. I didn't talk about the swinging animation, but it looks pretty great. I love how Rayman moves and just so smooth for a Game Boy Color game. And that's all I got for this game. Rayman 3 is next, and it's actually one of my personal favorites. I'm not sure if it's better than Rayman 2. I'd say the games are probably equal, but I don't know which one is actually better. So some of the animations are also nice. A lot of the animations are basically identical to the one in Rayman 2. Like flying, for example. He still looks squat position when he does it. His wedding animation can either have him throwing his hair back, shaking his hand probably for a watch, I guess, I don't know, scratching his head, or kicking his torso around like it's a ball. And his walking animation is pretty nice as well. I like how he pulls back his hands, personally. And yeah, that's not really that picky. But it's pretty much required for the video, when you think about it. When he jumps, he still does the flip like he does in Rayman 2 as well. I pretty much really like it. When he stands in place while charging up his punch, he moves his hand around in circles insanely fast. And also step up his foot like he does in the original. But he doesn't get mad while charging up his punch like he does in Rayman 1. It's fine, but I think he should look mad. I just love how Rayman looks. And punching also does look exactly like Rayman 2 as well. When jumping, his hair gets pulled back in the air like the wind's blowing it. There's also this rolling animation that pretty much doesn't really seem to get used very much. The only thing I really say about it is that Rayman's tail getting pulled back when rolling. That's something I've said multiple times, so I can't really say anything else since it's not that good of an animation. I mean, it's decent, but there's really not much to say. Rayman slides, there's a really goofy and kind of just like unexpected, I guess you could say, kind of animation, facial expression plays. Like he's very, very surprised that he's falling, but he's also like scared at the same time. The climbing animation is the same as the second game, but he doesn't really fling his hands and feet around as much. It's basically like a more calmish version of the second game's animation. There's really not much to say about the ledge grabbing animation. It's just him holding onto a ledge. What else do you want me to say, dude? Same thing goes for the sidestep animation. It's like Rayman 2. No differences at all besides him not actually kicking his feet while moving. That's a very small difference and doesn't matter too much. That's all for Rayman 3. The console version at least. But I'd say that this game made a very slight upgrade from Rayman 2. A lot of the animations are exactly the same found in Rayman 2, so I'd say it's just a slight upgrade. But it's not bad whatsoever. So let's move on to the Game Boy Advance version. The GBA version alongside Rayman Advance were two of the games that I played the most on my old Wii U before we threw it out. I'm expecting animations to look pretty nice compared to the older handheld games we looked at. Seeing as Rayman Advance on the Game Boy Advance, which is really just a port of the old Rayman game, had some pretty good animations even for a Game Boy Advance games. Let's get started. The auto animation is unsurprisingly simple. It's just like Rayman 2, but there's really nothing else to say. When the running animation plays, it's very similar if not identical to the console version's running anime. As in animation, I'm going to say anime for a little bit just to save time. Same thing goes for the jump and hovering animation, but the punching anime is a lot like the one from Rayman 1. Rayman's back to being mad when he charges up, and I like it a lot. When he charges up the punch, he's actually now throwing his fist, and not the spears like whatever the heck you want to call them, that he throws in Rayman 3. I'm not sure if he throws the spears in Rayman 3. Actually, no, he doesn't. I've heard multiple people say that he throws his hands in Rayman 3, but I don't actually think he does. It doesn't really look like his hands at all. The crouching animation, what the heck you want to call it, I've said it a bunch of times already, is also similar to the first game's anime as well. Get used to me calling it anime to save time. He moves his hands and feet in a slightly different manner. He's moving them around more energetically. When Rayman enters the stage, it looks unsurprisingly smooth, as you'd likely expect since the Game Boy Color could do smooth things, so the Game Boy Advance should too. The climbing animation also looks really smooth. It's like a less energetic version of the one from the second game. The bouncing anime is very faithful to the one in the third game, but Rayman isn't kind of like pulled from the air, you know? In the console version, Rayman stays kind of up like still when he still bounces up. That was hard to explain. I don't even know what the heck the script is saying now. With the GBA version, it's not like that. He instead jumps with his feet up when the anime starts. He doesn't get pulled from the air for his walking anime. He'll either just look around with his hands, his eyes, like the first game, is a yo-yo, which I think is funny. Nobody uses yo-yos anymore, that's sad. Kick his torso or do some motion that I honestly can't even describe. I just do it when I'm bored or... Wait, no, he has more animations for some reason. Actually, I didn't, at the time running the script, I didn't see them. Okay, let's talk about it. He blows a red bubble, or bounces torso around instead of kicking it. There's quite a few waiting animations. If he's climbing on a pole, per se, then he'll kick his feet in the direction that he's looking and not his fist. He'll also get mad in the animation and a looking up animation. When he looks up, it's literally what you'd expect, and there's really nothing to say about it. And his mad auto animation is him just moving his hands. Torso and head like Rayman 2. Also has holding animation, I guess you could say. He'll hold a barrel when he's mad and moves his body slightly like the mad animation. He also has a swing animation. His hair is being blown by the wind and his body is being moved around like in the process. And that's it. Let's move on to the next game. The next game I'll be talking about is going to be Rayman Hoodlum's Revenge. As of time writing the script, this is really the first time that I've ever played the game. I've heard of the game multiple times. I've just never really been that interested in it, seeing as it's an isometrical game, not even truly 3D, which I'm not going to blame them since it's a GBA. I've got a lot of good impressions so far, because it seems to be basically like a handheld port of the game that's actually in 3D, or isometrical, whatever the heck you want to call it, but different level design. So let's start with it. He throws his fist instead of the air, whatever the heck you want to call it, and I actually like that more. Since the animation are mostly the same as Rayman 3, I'm going to just list down the ones that are the same from the original since there's really nothing else to say about them. The walking, jumping, hovering, and the waiting animations, and the climbing animation, the ledge grabbing one is boring. And the fist throwing one is just too simplistic. There's not much to say about this one. There's really not many animations compared to the others. That's all I've got for this game, obviously, so let's move on to my least favorite Rayman game of all time. The GBA version came first, so I'll talk about that. Yeah, I prefer the GBA one. The console version and DS games suck. I mean, the original DS one is not that bad, but, you know, when I said my least favorite one, I'm talking about the console one. No matter if we're talking about Rayman, Raving, Rabbids 1, 2, or TV Party, they all suck. I love the auto animation. You start out the game without your arms in the auto animation, and obviously has Rayman without them. Rayman seems to be like out of breath, I guess you could say. He's always panting with his hair slightly moving back and forth. But I actually love it, man. I think it looks very good, and while it's not the most natural, that doesn't draw it away from being amazing. And don't forget that it's just the idle animation. He sadly doesn't have any waiting animations, at least when he doesn't have arms. The idle animation is kind of just his waiting one, I guess you could say, because he's always moving back and forth compared to how he usually is just standing still with his other games, moving his body very slightly. When crouching-ish, Rayman's laying down on the floor, looking left and right, doing the same with his body. When he's moving, he kind of just moves his feet left and right, and the same goes for his body and the animation. When jumping, Rayman looks really energetic. His hair and scarf is getting blown by the wind, I guess you could say, like other animations. He also arches his feet when jumping. When flying, he kind of wobbles his body around, and his hair spins normally, I guess you could say. It makes sense that his body wobbles since it doesn't have arms to kind of like just keep his balance or whatever the heck you want to say. Once you get your hands, Rayman has a waiting animation finally. He'll look around with his hand on top of his eye like the other games. Specifically Rayman 1, maybe some others. I think there's more, but I can't really just think about them on the top of my head. He's also panting a little bit more when he has his arms back, which is funny. He still kind of wobbles when he's flying with his hands though. It's not much of a problem to me though. When charging his punch up the hand, it can get yellow. And Rayman's back, he's actually back to being mad, which I like it. When holding a barrel, his facial expression kind of just empathizes that it's too heavy. You're gonna drop it on your feet, you retard. I suggest that you put it down. In the Child's Play stage, we'll see a climbing animation. But we don't climb on walls, instead we climb on these barbed wire looking things. I mean, you climb on walls eventually, but it's really nothing different from Rayman 3's. The animation basically is identical to the one in Rayman 2. There's also now a bouncing animation. Rayman's hair is getting blown by the wind. I've said that way too much times, well in the air. Which I'm sure you'd expect at this point, since basically all games have it now. Like Rayman 3. Well, at least I think you've probably lost track of the games at this point. I don't know which ones have them. You can also kick your shoes instead of throwing your hands when hanging. In Child's Play, you also learn how to wall jump. Well, not really. I'm honestly not even sure what to actually call it, but all I know is that it's the thing from Rayman 2, 3, and 3 GBA. Rayman looks very determined when he's in a tight space, honestly. And the GBA likely has lots more animations, but that's all I'm going to talk about. And honorable mention, the DS and console games. I say honorable mentions because the Wii version basically just reuses the ones from Rayman 3 and adds slightly different graphics. And the DS version runs on the engine used in Rayman 2. It's not a bad thing, but in the games themselves don't revolve around platforming, more of mini games, not the DS one. I mean, Rayman, Raving, Rabbids 2, and TV Party on the DS, I'm pretty sure those are literally just only mini games. The only time you ever really move Rayman himself on the console version is when you're choosing which mini game to do. So let's move on to my final games topic, and I'll explain why the name is what it is after the intro. What I mean by modern Rayman is the newest games. Unlike the older ones in the engine, it doesn't seem to change the newer games, so there's mostly, if not entirely, not going to be any new animations when a new modern game comes out. I'll mainly be talking about Legends, seeing as it's the most recent game, not counting the mobile versions. So let's get started. As expected, the animation ain't really anything special. It's like the one we've seen before with the new engine. The walking animation is a more calm version of the one in Rayman 2. Running is more energetic version of the one from Rayman 3. I stood still for a while and I just didn't see a waiting animation in Legends. So I think they just sadly don't have one. Not that it matters since I really couldn't dream of it ever being better than the one in Rayman 2. It's just too good. And the ducking animation with his torso facing down obviously and his hair staying in the floor. A nice detail is that Rayman's mouth is more open. Pause on that, but still, this is a nice addition. The animation will play is when Rayman's walking and wants to move a different direction. He has his hair moving a little bit different. As I've said 74 times now, his hair is kind of just being blown by the wind, I guess you would say. But this time, very, very, very slightly. And his hair only looks different for like 1 millisecond. I had to ultra slow down the clip so I could even explain it before writing this part on the script. When he's running and turning to a different direction, it's more so just a more surprise expression than the walking one. I'd compare the jumping animation to the one in Rayman 3. It's very slightly similar. The animation starts out like he's bouncing in the one from animation in Rayman 3. Then he'll open his arms up and feet. Then I'll fall right down. The jumping in and flipping animation is whatever the heck you want to call it. It's kind of just starts out with him diving, which I'll talk about later. Then he'll obviously just flip his whole body. Then he'll open his hands and feet. The dive and flip animation don't really have much to say about them, to be honest. The wall sliding animation kind of has Rayman looking surprised and then looking the opposite and jumping the opposite way to the wall. I can't explain the wall jump animation itself though. It's really just pretty complicated. The same thing goes for the cartwheel. There's nothing to say about it. Nothing you can say at all. I obviously tend to slack when writing scripts when I know the video is almost done, and I'm kind of doing that here, to be honest, and I don't feel bad whatsoever. But I finally talk about the swimming animations. The idle swimming animation has Rayman kicking his feet a little bit and holding his breath, obviously. Swimming with normal speeds, nothing different aside from Rayman kicking his feet very, very, very slightly more. Quickly swimming has got Rayman aggressively kicking his feet and him closing his eyes and his hair moving back. I don't know how the heck you'd see when you're closing your eyes, but whatever. Want the kind of punching animation, I guess you could say, is Rayman spinning his hands. And alright, no outro. Bye.